Teen found dead in a quarry, the unsolved occult mystery of Jeannette DePalma. Before we dive in, kindly hit the subscribe button and let us know where you are watching from in the comment. It was late summer. The year was 1972. The place, Springfield Township, New Jersey. A quiet suburban town. A community where families left their doors unlocked. A place where kids rode bikes until dark and teenagers dreamed of escaping to bigger cities. Nothing about Springfield suggested darkness. But that would change. On August 7, 1972, 16-year-old Jeannette DePalma left her home. She never came back. Jeannette wasn't just another teenager. She was bright, outspoken, pretty. She had dreams like every 16-year-old. Her family described her as strong-willed but caring. She was the kind of girl who stood out. Her faith was important to her. She often spoke about God, about living right, about making choices that mattered. But Springfield wasn't untouched by trouble. Drugs were creeping into the community. Parties stretched late into the night. Teenagers were getting restless. And Jeannette was stuck between two worlds. Faith and rebellion, family and freedom. Some say she had been going through a phase of questioning. Others believed she was struggling to find her place. Whatever the truth, that August, Jeannette seemed more restless than usual. It started like any ordinary summer day. The DePalma household was alive with routine. Jeannette told her family she was heading out. She was dressed simply, jeans, a shirt, casual. She didn't pack much. She wasn't planning on going far. She left the house, walked out into the warm afternoon air, and vanished. At first, her family wasn't worried. 16-year-olds didn't always keep to a strict schedule. Maybe she was at a friend's house. Maybe she lost track of time. But as the hours passed, unease grew. Night came, darkness fell, and Jeannette never walked through the door. The panic began. Her family immediately reached out to neighbors. Calls were made. Doors were knocked on. They asked everyone, "Have you seen Jeannette?" But no one had. It was as if she had walked out of her home and disappeared into thin air. Springfield wasn't the kind of place where kids just went missing. The community was tight-knit. People knew each other's routines. Everyone noticed everything. So how could a 16-year-old girl just vanish? By the second day, fear took over. Her family reported her missing. Police were notified. Flyers were made. The search began. At first, the town reacted with sympathy. Volunteers offered to help. Families prayed. The local church held gatherings for her safe return. But soon, the whispers began. Some said Jeannette was a runaway. Maybe she had gotten tired of the rules at home. Maybe she wanted freedom. Others whispered about darker things. They said Springfield had secrets, that the woods surrounding the town weren't as innocent as they seemed. Rumors spread about parties in the woods, strange symbols, hidden gatherings, whispers of the occult. At first, the police ignored it. A runaway seemed more likely than a satanic cult. But those whispers would grow louder, much louder, in the weeks to come. Police organized searches. Neighbors combed through woods, fields, and trails. Every creek bed, every dirt path, every abandoned lot. But days turned into weeks, and there was no trace, no clothing, no personal belongings, no body. It was like Jeannette had been erased. Her family was devastated. Her mother pleaded for answers. The community grew uneasy. Fear started to replace hope. By the end of August, the search had stalled. The police had little to go on. Leads dried up. Witnesses contradicted each other. Some said they saw Jeannette walking near town. Others swore they saw her hitchhiking. But nothing could be confirmed. The trail was cold. By September, a strange tension hung over Springfield. People locked their doors at night now. Parents warned their kids to stay close. The woods, once a place of play and escape, became a place of fear. And the rumors continued. People said teenagers were holding rituals, that strange carvings were found in the trees, that animals had been found mutilated. Satanic panic wasn't yet sweeping the country. That would explode in the 1980s. But in Springfield, the seeds were already there. And Jeannette's disappearance became part of those whispers. Some claimed she had been taken by a cult. Others thought it was drugs, that she had fallen in with the wrong crowd. But her family didn't believe it. They knew Jeannette. They knew she would never just run away. They believed something terrible had happened. And they were right. 6 weeks later, on September 19, 1972, a local dog returned home carrying something in its mouth. It wasn't a stick. It wasn't an animal bone. It was a human arm. The discovery shocked everyone. Police immediately traced where the dog had likely found it. They followed the trail. It led them to an abandoned quarry. What they found inside would horrify the community. 6 weeks of silence ended in the most gruesome way imaginable. Jeannette DePalma's body had finally been found, but the way it was discovered and what surrounded her would open a mystery that remains unsolved to this day. Her disappearance was only the beginning. The real story was far darker. It was September 19, 1972. 6 weeks had passed since Jeannette DePalma disappeared. For her family, those 6 weeks were unbearable. Every knock at the door sent a jolt of hope. Every phone call made their hearts race. But each time it wasn't her. The search had grown quiet. Police had fewer and fewer leads. The town had begun to whisper less. Life was trying to move on. And then it happened. That afternoon, a local dog returned home. It wasn't carrying a stick. It wasn't carrying scraps. It was carrying a human arm. The owner froze. Shock, terror, confusion. Couldn't be real. But it was. Flesh, bone, human. They immediately called the police. Officers rushed to the scene. The dog's tracks were followed back, step by step, through the trees, across brush, over dirt paths. The trail ended at an abandoned quarry. Inside that quarry was a sight that no one in Springfield would ever forget. At the top of a steep cliff, sprawled across the rocks, lay the remains of 16-year-old Jeannette DePalma. Her body was badly decomposed. 6 weeks in the elements had stripped away much. Yet enough remained to confirm the horrifying truth. It was her. It was Jeannette. But it wasn't just her body that made the scene disturbing. It was what was around her. According to reports from that day, details that would later be debated, whispered about, and even suppressed, the area around Jeannette's body was strange. Some said animal bones were scattered around her. Others swore there were wooden crosses arranged nearby. Still others claimed the site looked like an altar. The police documented what they saw. But over time, much of it would disappear from official record. Witnesses said notes were vague, evidence incomplete, and the strangest details were left out. Why? Was it sloppy police work? Or something more deliberate? No one can say for sure. But one fact is undeniable. The scene looked ritualistic. The quarry wasn't just any random place. Local teenagers already whispered about it. They said the quarry was a hangout spot for troublemakers, that kids went there to drink, smoke, party. But they also said stranger things happened there. Rumors of witchcraft, whispers of satanic gatherings, talk of dark rituals. For years, local parents had warned their kids not to wander there. And now, with Jeannette's body found at the site, those warnings seemed like prophecy. The whispers exploded. Jeannette's body was taken in for examination. But after 6 weeks in the summer heat, her remains were in rough shape. The medical examiner struggled to determine the exact cause of death. There were no obvious stab wounds, no clear signs of gunfire, no evidence of a fall down the cliff. Her death was ruled suspicious, but it wasn't classified as homicide. This was unusual. A 16-year-old girl doesn't simply drop dead in a quarry. The public wanted answers. Instead, they got vagueness. Some investigators suggested strangulation. Others thought drugs may have played a role. Still others left the door open to something far stranger. The truth was buried with her. When news spread, Springfield was thrown into chaos. A missing teen was one thing. A body surrounded by possible ritual symbols? That was something else entirely. The town buzzed with theories. Some whispered about occult groups practicing in the woods. Some spoke of satanic rituals and sacrifices. Others thought Jeannette had stumbled onto something she wasn't supposed to see. Parents locked their doors tighter. Children were forbidden from going near the woods or the quarry. The once quiet town was now consumed with fear. Not everyone trusted the police. Some locals said authorities weren't telling the full truth, that they downplayed the occult angle to avoid mass panic. Others believed powerful people in the town wanted the case to go away, that certain families didn't want their children implicated. Journalists later claimed police files on the case were missing or incomplete. Newspaper archives seemed to have gaps. Witnesses who spoke about the occult details were dismissed as liars or hysterics. Was it a cover-up, or just chaos and sloppy record-keeping? Either way, the silence left space for the rumors to grow. Jeannette's death quickly became linked to the occult in public imagination. The early 1970s were a time when fear of witchcraft and Satanism was beginning to surface. Stories of ritual sacrifice were creeping into American culture, and Springfield had its own local legends. Teenagers told stories of witches meeting in the woods, of black masses, of animals killed and left in strange patterns. So when Jeannette's body was found, surrounded by strange items, it didn't take long for the town to connect the dots. But was it true? Or was it the power of rumor, fear, and grief twisting the facts? For the DePalma family, none of the rumors mattered. What mattered was that their daughter was gone. Their teenage girl had walked out of the house one afternoon and ended up dead in a quarry. Theories about witchcraft, drugs, or cults didn't bring her back. Her mother grieved openly. She believed Jeannette had been murdered. She believed someone had lured her, trapped her, and left her there. And she wanted justice. But justice never came. In the weeks after the discovery, Springfield split in two. On one side were those who believed Jeannette had fallen victim to something dark. Maybe a cult, maybe Satanists, maybe an occult ritual gone wrong. On the other side were skeptics. They believed she may have overdosed, that maybe she had been experimenting with drugs, that the ritual scene was just coincidence. But the truth lay somewhere in the middle, and without solid answers, the mystery only deepened. After the initial wave of panic, things grew quiet. The police released little information. The press eventually moved on. The public's attention shifted elsewhere. But for Jeannette's family, silence was unbearable. The case was unsolved, the questions unanswered, the rumors unending. What happened in that quarry? Why was her body surrounded by strange symbols? And why did it seem like no one wanted to dig deeper? The silence would last for decades. Jeannette's body had been found, but the discovery didn't bring closure. It brought more questions. And soon, the whispers about the occult would turn into something bigger. Stories of secret gatherings, of teenagers dabbling in witchcraft, of a town hiding its darkest secrets. The mystery of Jeannette DePalma was only beginning to unravel. For more chilling true crime stories, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. The body had been found. The town should have had answers. But instead, Springfield had only questions and fear. The quarry was no longer just a place for kids to drink and hang out. It was now a symbol, a stage where evil had walked in, a reminder that darkness could strike anywhere. The whispers spread like wildfire. Parents warned their children, "Don't go into the woods." Teenagers swore they had seen strange fires in the night. Others whispered about cloaked figures meeting in circles. Someone even claimed animals had been found dead, arranged in strange patterns. The rumors grew with every telling. The story of Jeannette wasn't just about a girl found dead anymore. It was about the occult. Almost immediately, the word witchcraft was tied to Jeannette's case. Some said she had been lured into a ritual. Others said she was sacrificed. The crosses, the rocks, the arrangement of bones. People swore it was all there, even though official police reports said little. And in the absence of clear facts, fear filled the gaps. Was Springfield harboring a coven of witches? Had Satanists claimed a life right in suburban New Jersey? No one knew, but everyone had an opinion. To make matters worse, Jeannette wasn't just any teenager. She was known to be religious, a Christian girl, a churchgoer, a believer. She had once struggled with drugs but had turned her life around. She often spoke about faith, about resisting temptation, about choosing God. That fact made her death even more chilling. Some said she was targeted because of her faith. Others said she had been silenced for knowing too much. The image of a religious teenager left dead in a quarry surrounded by possible ritual symbols became fuel for the town's fears. Within days, theories flooded Springfield. The occult sacrifice theory. The most popular story was that Jeannette had been killed in a ritual sacrifice. People said local cults had been operating in the woods for years. They claimed Jeannette had been their victim. The drug overdose theory. Some investigators leaned toward a simpler explanation. They said Jeannette may have overdosed. Her body could have been placed in the quarry afterward by friends who panicked. The stranger theory. A smaller group believed Jeannette had met someone she didn't know. Predator. Someone who killed her and left her body in a way that looked like ritual. Each theory had believers. Each had holes. But none had evidence strong enough to close the case. For weeks, people snuck into the quarry. Some came out terrified, swearing they had seen leftover bones, crosses, strange carvings. Others insisted there was nothing there but rocks and weeds. But the truth didn't matter anymore. The quarry had taken on a myth of its own. Attention quickly turned to the teenagers of Springfield. Were kids dabbling in witchcraft? Were they experimenting with dark rituals? Police quietly interviewed some of the local teens who had been known to hang out in the woods. Some were rumored to be experimenting with seances. Some were even said to be sacrificing animals. But no charges were filed. And the whispers remained just that, whispers. The lack of answers only deepened the panic. The police gave few updates. They insisted they were investigating. But months went by with no arrests, no suspects, no clear cause of death. To the public, it looked like the case was dying before it even began. And when the police failed to speak, the community spoke louder. Local churches became central to the story. Pastors warned that Jeannette's death was proof of the devil at work. Congregations were told to keep their children close. Some even said the woods were cursed. Others pushed back. They said fear was driving people mad. They urged the community not to give in to hysteria. But hysteria is contagious. And Springfield was infected. Though the case was never solved, names did begin to circulate. Local boys who were rumored to practice witchcraft. Drug users who might have been with Jeannette that day. Strangers spotted near the quarry around the time she vanished. Even people in authority were whispered about, with theories that powerful figures wanted the case buried. The problem was, none of these suspects were ever officially named in police records. They lived in rumor, not in evidence. But in Springfield, rumor was powerful. Years later, journalists would try to uncover the truth. They found that many of the police files on Jeannette's case were missing. Some said they had been lost. Others said they had been destroyed. Why? Was it incompetence? Or deliberate silence? The missing records only strengthened the theory that someone wanted Jeannette's story hidden. By the end of 1972, Springfield was no longer the same. A teenage girl had been found dead under mysterious circumstances. Her body had been linked to occult rumors. Her death had no clear cause. The case faded from the headlines, but it never left the town's memory. Children grew up hearing about Jeannette. Parents grew old warning their kids not to repeat history. The quarry became a place of ghost stories and hushed voices. Jeannette had become less of a person and more of a legend. And yet, her story was just one piece of a much larger puzzle. In the years that followed, across America, stories of satanic rituals, occult murders, and witchcraft would grip the nation. What happened to Jeannette was not just a local tragedy. It was a harbinger. Her death became an early chapter in what would later be called the Satanic Panic. But before the nation panicked, Springfield already had. And Jeannette DePalma was at the center of it all. The case had no suspects, no answers, just whispers. But the whispers were about to get louder. In Chapter 4, we follow how Jeannette's case was remembered, how it spread beyond Springfield, and how the nation's obsession with Satanism gave her tragedy new life. The occult mystery of Jeannette DePalma was only just beginning to grow. The quarry had been quiet for months. Jeannette's name was slipping from the headlines. But the story wasn't finished. It was only sleeping, because what happened in Springfield in 1972 was about to become part of a storm much larger than anyone there could have imagined. The early 1970s were uneasy years in America. The Vietnam War was still raging. Trust in government had crumbled after scandals and lies. Serial killers seemed to stalk the streets. Zodiac, son of Sam, Manson. And woven into all that chaos was something darker, something more invisible. The fear of the occult. Across the country, newspapers were printing stories of animal sacrifices. Books warned about witchcraft. Talk shows brought on former Satanists who spoke about rituals and secret cults. And into that culture, the story of Jeannette DePalma fit like a puzzle piece. By 1973, Springfield was no longer the only town whispering about cults. In New York, police investigated reports of animal remains arranged in circles. In California, the shadow of Charles Manson still loomed large, with his bizarre talk of ritual sacrifice. In the Midwest, missing children cases were being linked, sometimes falsely, to witchcraft. So when people looked back at Jeannette's body in the quarry, the story became bigger. No longer just a local mystery, it became a warning sign. The police had never officially confirmed ritual objects around Jeannette's body, but rumors insisted they were there. Crosses, rocks in a circle, bones of animals. The details shifted depending on who told the story. But by the mid-70s, those details were set in stone. To many, Jeannette wasn't just a girl who died. She was a sacrifice. Pastors and priests across New Jersey seized on the story. They warned parents about the dangers of witchcraft. They told teenagers to avoid seances, Ouija boards, and books about magic. Some even called Jeannette a martyr, a girl killed because of her faith in God. In Springfield, her church was filled with sermons about the devil's influence. The community was divided between those who saw her death as random tragedy and those who believed it was a spiritual war. Behind the scenes, police officers were frustrated. Some believed the occult rumors were out of control. They wanted to focus on practical explanations, drug use, accidents, or foul play unrelated to rituals. But the problem was this: the public didn't want a practical explanation. They wanted mystery. They wanted fear. And fear was louder than facts. By the late 1970s, books began to appear linking Jeannette's case to the occult. One underground magazine described her as a victim of a satanic cult. A local writer claimed insiders had proof of witchcraft in Springfield. The facts weren't always checked. The claims weren't always solid. But once written, they spread. And each new article made the legend bigger. Parents in Springfield still talk about it decades later. They remember not letting their kids play outside after dark. They remember hearing about Satanists in the woods. They remember locking their doors, even though the town had once felt safe. It was as if Jeannette's death had infected everyone with suspicion. Every shadow looked dangerous. Every group of teens in the woods looked like a coven. Then, something even stranger happened. Years later, when journalists tried to revisit the case, they discovered many of the official police files were gone. Some officers said the documents were lost in a flood. Others said they had been destroyed when the department moved offices. But skeptics weren't buying it. If Jeannette's death was just an overdose, why were the records missing? Why erase the history? The missing files became proof, at least in the public's mind, that someone didn't want the truth to come out. And it wasn't just Springfield. Across the country, strange deaths, missing children, and unexplained crimes were being tied, fairly or not, to satanic cults. In Texas, a family claimed their child had been abducted by occultists. In California, police investigated animal sacrifices in wooded areas. In New York, son of Sam hinted that he was part of a larger satanic network. To the public, these stories weren't isolated. They were connected, and Jeannette's name kept coming back as one of the earliest known victims. By the early 1980s, the whispers had turned into full-blown hysteria. Daycares were accused of harboring satanic cults. Parents were convinced that hidden groups were brainwashing children. Police across the country were trained to look for satanic symbols at crime scenes. And Springfield's Quarry was remembered as one of the first places where the panic had roots. Jeannette was now part of something much bigger than her small New Jersey town. But lost in all the fear was the simple, tragic truth. Jeannette was a teenager. She had dreams. She had friends. She had a family that loved her. Her life was cut short, and instead of answers, her story was drowned in rumors. For her parents, it wasn't about cults or Satanism. It was about a daughter they would never see again. But the world rarely saw Jeannette the person. They saw Jeannette the legend. Springfield split into two camps. Those who believed the occult story. Those who believed it was just a tragic accident. The two sides never agreed, and the police never solved it, which meant Jeannette's death remained in the shadows. By the 1990s, most cold cases had faded from memory, but Jeannette's didn't. Her story continued to resurface in books, in documentaries, in whispers passed down to new generations. And every time it came back, the same question haunted people. Was she really killed by Satanists? Or was it just a tragic death twisted by fear? By now, Springfield had changed. The Quarry was no longer the same, but the legend of Jeannette DePalma had become permanent. Her name still makes people lower their voices. Her story still makes parents warn their children. Because in the end, her death wasn't just about one girl. It was about an entire community that felt the ground shift under them. The day Jeannette was found, Springfield lost something. Not just a life, but its innocence. The case of Jeannette DePalma never found justice, but it never went away. In the final chapter, we will dive into the modern investigations. How journalists, authors, and researchers tried to uncover the truth, and how, decades later, her mystery still refuses to rest. The story of Jeannette DePalma isn't finished. It may never be. For decades, Jeannette's story lived in whispers. It was passed around campfires, church basements, and late-night conversations in Springfield, New Jersey. But in the early 2000s, something happened. The world remembered her again. It began with a journalist named Mark Moran, co-founder of the magazine Weird NJ. Moran was fascinated by local legends. And one story kept coming up, the mysterious death of a teenage girl in 1972. The more he asked, the stranger it became. Some people refused to talk. Others only whispered. A few insisted Moran should drop it altogether. That kind of silence only made him dig deeper. When Moran requested the police records, he was stunned. They were gone, vanished. The official explanation? Lost during a move, destroyed in a flood. But there was no proof either way. To Moran, the missing files were suspicious. It wasn't just sloppy record-keeping. It felt deliberate. And without the documents, all that was left were rumors. Rumors of rocks arranged in a circle. Rumors of crosses made from sticks. Rumors of animal bones nearby. The case had been stripped of evidence, leaving only legend. Moran and his partner, Mark Scorman, interviewed locals. Many agreed to speak off the record. One man swore he saw cult activity in the Watchung Reservation near the Quarry. Another claimed animals had been mutilated there in the years after Jeannette's death. A few whispered that wealthy, powerful families in Springfield were involved. But no one would sign their name to a statement. Everyone was afraid. Afraid of what? That question hung in the air. In 2006, the two Marks published their findings in Death on the Devil's Teeth, the strange murder that shocked suburban New Jersey. The title alone was enough to reignite the fire. The book suggested Jeannette may have been killed in an occult ritual. It tied her story to the rising satanic panic that swept America. It pointed out the inconsistencies, the missing files, and the silence of locals. The book didn't solve the case, but it made sure no one would forget Jeannette again. Since the book's release, new theories have surfaced. Some say Jeannette overdosed on drugs and her body was staged to look like a ritual. Others insist she was targeted by a cult. A few suggest she was killed by someone in power, someone untouchable, who made the case disappear. And then there are those who believe it was all just a tragic accident. That the legend of witchcraft grew from fear, not fact. The truth? No one knows. But one detail keeps people hooked. The symbols. The arrangement of objects around her body. The stories of animal sacrifices nearby. If those were real, then Jeannette's death wasn't random. It was intentional. It was ritual. But without the police records, it's impossible to confirm. That absence, the missing proof, is what fuels the fire. For all the theories, it's easy to forget Jeannette was a real person. She wasn't just a mystery. She wasn't just a headline. She was a teenager. She loved fashion. She dreamed of a future. Her family never got answers. They never got justice. They only got rumors. And for them, the occult legends only deepen the wound. So why does her story endure? Because it represents something bigger than one unsolved death. It shows how communities can be consumed by fear, how rumors can become more powerful than facts, how a missing file can create a legend that outlives the truth. Jeannette's case is not just about a girl in a quarry. It's about America's relationship with fear. Looking back, historians now see Jeannette's story as an early marker of what became the satanic panic of the 1980s. Her death was cited in books, TV shows, and local lore as proof of occult activity. Her name became shorthand for the dangers lurking in the woods. But what if it was all built on a misunderstanding? What if the panic turned a tragedy into a myth? Even now, the case leaves haunting questions. Why did the files disappear? Were there really symbols around her body? Why were locals so afraid to talk? Was Jeannette truly a victim of the occult? Or of a small town's fear? Every theory opens a door, and every door leads to more shadows. The quarry where Jeannette's body was found is quiet now. Nature has reclaimed much of it. Birds sing where whispers once filled the air. But for those who know the story, it's not just land. It's a graveyard of answers. A place where truth was buried as deep as stone. In the end, Jeannette's case may never be solved. But maybe that's why it endures. Because unsolved mysteries live forever. They haunt us. They force us to imagine the answers. And in imagining, the story never dies. Jeannette DePalma was just 16 years old. Her life ended too soon, and her story was taken from her. What remains is a legend, a cautionary tale, a mystery that still chills the air in Springfield. And whether she was the victim of a cult, an accident, or something else entirely, one truth remains. The world failed her. This is the story of Jeannette DePalma, a girl found dead in a quarry, a name tied forever to fear, mystery, and the unknown. Her case is still unsolved. Her truth is still missing, and her ghost still lingers in the cracks of American history, because some mysteries never let go. For more chilling true crime stories, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel.